Hello again, and this is the fifth video I'm doing on this topic. I'm going to continue doing this kind of overview because I need to have, in order to keep talking about the things, some background that back up my claims, and also to make it intelligible for everybody instead of like guessing what I'm trying to say. So for now we have so far what we have is that elements like the individual and the world. That's one of the elements that I've been discussing in these topics. And the second one is adaptation or self-realization. And another important topic is that they're all connected, and it's total plasticity or limited adaptation. So for the first one, individual, the world, I claim that there is a dialectic relationship between these two elements, and we cannot understand one without the other. Adaptation of self-realization. Adaptation of self-realization is related with the topic of the ego or the self. And if we have the ego, which will be the base for complete plasticity of ourself into the world, since we don't have a core that is defining us, that'll be adaptation. And self-realization has something to do with this empty container I refer or addressed in, I think was my last clip. And finally, total plasticity or limited adaptation. Probably as humans we can adapt a lot because we have this dialogical and dialectic capacity of communication that we can make sense by dialogue. Dialogue not only by speaking but relating with our capacity of paying attention and understanding and modifying, and again like the typical concept of dialectic, Hegelian or Marxist dialectic, thesis and antithesis and synthesis. So this is what we have so far. So I want to make a little drawing, since I'm now fancier because I have a second camera. So I'm gonna do a little drawing to show this in a graphical way, and we are going back to the discussion. So we have the individual, and we have the environment or the world. But so there is pressure from the world to individual, and we don't know this is the individual. We don't know what is inside of the individual. Let's see what we have discussed so far. So do we have an ego, or do we have a self? If the whole point is with the ego, we have total plasticity. So with the only limitation of some biological limitation that can, stop this total plasticity. On the other hand, if we have, instead of the ego, if we have the self, we won't be able to have total plasticity because there are some definitions. We can use even a Kant word, an a priori individual, or how the way I call it, like empty container. All right, so this is our situation. I think we have a fire somewhere here, but this is our situation. So taken to a cultural level, uh, if we analyze the concept of normality, what is normal? We have, for example, here in the Holy Bible, the concept of normality is a prescription. And for example, we have here the Ten Commandments, and the Commandments will tell us what is expected from us, what is normal for humans to do. Although we know the concept of sin and what is behind that they were expelled from paradise and so on and so forth, because, you know, the original sin, and when Eve gave the apple to Adam, and everything was lost. And on top of that, the earth was like a consolation prize, and so they could do whatever they want with it. And Greenpeace and obviously the ecologists should, they do, some of them, look at that, that thought as authorization to basically exploit the earth, or seeing the earth as a resource instead of seeing the earth as an element that we belong to, because we are made of the same components: carbon, oxygen, and everything else. Okay, so that's one approach. Now we have the second approach. That's the approach of like the non-modern world. But if we see the approach of, for example, the modern world, if we see, for example, the concept of normality, what we're going to see is a totally different thing. And normality, basically, it's a statistic concept. And for example, Wikipedia says that normality is the property of conforming to a norm. And a norm is something given by a bigger body of that can lay law, for example. And an assimilation, sociology would call that, is the property to assimilate. So it's, as I said, it's a statistic concept. It's a very flexible concept that it's a historical concept that can, might, and will change through time. So it's nothing where we can grab from. So this makes the discussion very interesting, but also is recurrent. It's kind of the same topics repeating and repeating again. So we have the concept of the church, which is prescriptive, and we have the concept of modernity, which is non-prescriptive. And for example, in the 20th century, existentialism, which was an answer to, for example, to the Holocaust, an answer to this idea of that things are based in essentialist and fixed ideas and substance that cannot be changed, was challenged by, for example, Jean-Paul Sartre. And Sartre, in his book Being and Nothingness, sets the problem in a different way. He says that existence is before being or self. So saying this, Sartre and all the existentialist movement, which is connected with phenomenology, established the idea that basically freedom, it's like at the core of the human affairs. And since they said that freedom is at the core of human affairs, humans will be evaluated by what they do in the world, but not in terms of the Ten Commandments, but in terms of responsibility. So if we have a total freedom, what is expected from us is responsibility. And so this is a philosophy which is based in nothingness that in the lack of transcendental identity, but it's also giving some kind of rules to deal with this emptiness in this world, which is all the world we can expect, because this is, according Sartre, this is the world where we use our brains and our intelligence and our thoughts in order to make sense of everything, but that's the ceiling of everything human. So we should act accordingly in order not to create more crime, more wars, more destruction. So we have these two views, the liberal view and the conservative view. But at the end of the story, the conservative view takes us to this rigidity of behavior and belief. And on the other hand, Sartre and all the movement of existentialism takes us to a perspective from the perspective of emptiness, but taking like responsibility for our acts. But it doesn't give us any transcendence or metaphysical answers or any self in terms of the self we were exploring before. And these elements are also very important to understand or to figure out psychology and therapy and normality and all those elements that they are very important to discuss in order to have a starting point for healing or for living and to make sense of what human life is. So at the end of this talk, I want to summarize the main two elements that on the one hand the religious one, the Abrahamic religion in this case, and on the other hand existentialism, which they have opposite views. One is essentialist or based in metaphysics and also blaming us humans because of the original sin, and give us all this prescriptive way of behaving in order to get salvation. And the other one, existentialism, which denies any kind of spirituality, because their argument is that our consciousness starts from our existence, and without our existence, our materiality, physical materiality. And without our physical materiality, we are not able to have consciousness. And and we are not able also to know better, because we cannot figure things out because we don't have the elements. So basically it's an agnostic philosophy. And so at the end of the story, both are touching themselves, because they are denying our possible capacity of this empty container, or this self that maybe Taoism can address. And then we, through this empty container, this self, we might be creating the self and unconscious and everything else, and becoming humans. And that will be the third explanation that it's hard to find in the West.